5 minutes after the hour, which seems like a good time to start. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rick Neville. I am the president of the Austin-Healey Club of New England. And normally, these tech sessions are hosted by Peter Sturdivant, who is right now enjoying the aloha of Maui. So, good for him. I think he could have made an effort to boost the 8-hour time difference, or 7 hours, to show up, but he didn't, so you're stuck with me. First of all, I want to let you all know that these questions and answer sessions are being recorded. We use them later on our YouTube channel and for other people to watch them if they miss them. So be careful what you say. And don't be where you're not supposed to be, and keep your girlfriend out of the picture. And also, please, if you're not talking, mute your microphone so we don't hear the dog barking in the background, or your wife degreasing the back of the differential or something. I know we have a couple of questions tonight, and let me see who we've got here.
I gotta do work.
Ray, are you on? I know Ray had a couple of questions about his TAC and rebuilding the overdrive. Okay. I also, let's just throw it out then. Who's gonna call? Who's got a question?
I have a question.
You go right ahead.
I sent them through email, but I guess you don't have them there.
Who's this?
Rich Duquette.
Oh, Rich, I'm sorry. I meant Rich too. When I said Ray, I meant Rich. I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself first so we know who you are and what you've got for a car, and go ahead.
I'm new to the club. I think maybe a second time new to the club. And I'm Portland, Connecticut, and my name is Rich Duquette, as you see on the screen. And I have a BJ8, 1967, and been completely done over from top to bottom. And I haven't quite got it right. There's a lot of gremlins that I'm dealing with. The major one right now is my shifting. I don't have first or second gear. I can put it into first or second gear if I play with it or if I shut it off. I have third and fourth. So I don't know if it's a slave cylinder that is very hard to bleed, or is it a, I know that there's no synchro on first. I should still be able to get into first when it's parked. Yeah, it's one of those situations, and I'm not sure. I hate to pull a transmission apart. I don't have to. Anybody had any ideas what's going on with that?
When are you able to drive the car?
Yes.
And does it shift into second and third and fourth when you're driving?
Yes. And when I shift down, it won't go into second gear, shifting down, unless I get down to maybe 20 miles an hour or so, and then it'll drop into second. I tend to think, see, I didn't do anything to this transmission. I bought it with the car with the transmission in, and the hint that I have is I have a piece of a bill from Moss Motors showing a couple of bearings that were purchased for the overdrive. It was the front bearing and a rear bearing that were replaced. So I'm assuming that if they were doing that, they must have looked at the transmission to see, if there was anything wrong with the synchros. They wouldn't just throw it all together and do it that way. So I kind of think it might be, I'm not bleeding it correctly. Is there another way to bleed that besides just stepping on the brake? I mean, stepping on the clutch?
Does it come up with a good solid pedal?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
Richard, do you know if the hydraulics have been refurbished?
You mean in the brake, the clutch hydraulics?
Clutch
Yeah,
system
it's got, yes. The master cylinder and the brake and the clutch have been, are new or rebuilt.
and the slave cylinder.
That's new.
Okay.
So what happens,
When you ask,
what happens when you bleed it? Do you get bubbles in the line?
No, don't seem to get any bubbles. I don't know if I should disconnect it and hold it up in the air and try to do it that way, and, you know, just disconnect it from the side of the bell housing or the engine, wherever it's connected there.
we have found two things that work very well to bleed your clutch cylinder.
What is?
We found two things that work well. One is, like you're saying, disconnect it from the side of the bell housing
Yep,
and hold it up as high as you can, and then open. Because if you're trying to bleed it with it locked, with it bolted on the
You're not on
transmission,
video.
it's almost impossible to get that screw open and closed.
yeah.
Open and closed.
Well, see, what I'm doing right now is I have the housing cover off.
Okay.
So I can look right at the transmission,
Okay.
and I can pump it at the same time I can bleed it. But it's still mounted to the side of the engine. But you say disconnect it, hold it up in the air. Try it that way.
We found that that helps.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've done whenever I can is put a remote bleeder on it.
Where would I get one of those?
Well, I'm just trying to think. Back in the day, it was a guy who called himself 18G Motorsports, but I can't think of his name right now. He passed away, but just recently somebody started producing them again. The guy's out of Ohio. I saw a note from him the other day, maybe Saturday, on Facebook, where he was asking for people to, he was asking about the bleeder for a Bug Eye Sprite, the remote bleeder for a Sprite. Could somebody show him a picture or send him the dimensions of one of those?
Mhm.
But it's a very, very handy thing to have, especially after you get your transmission tunnel back on and you can't get to that screw very well.
Yeah,
It's not an expensive piece. It's just some more brake line. It's bent so that you attach it onto the slave cylinder permanently, and then you take the bleeder screw out of the slave cylinder and put it up on the other end of it. So it's right in the engine compartment by the side of the transmission, by the side of the bell housing. I can't think of his name right now. I could send a link to Peter or something like that and have him post it to you. Or if I can get your email, I'll just email you the guy's name.
okay. You want my email?
Yep, go.
I can shed some light on that too, Richard. I had trouble with my 62 tricarb, lost first gear, second gear, and it turned out to be the hydraulics. The slave cylinder was desperate need of rebuilding, which I did. And during the rebuild, I found an article in one of the Healey magazines that told you how to install a hose on the end of the bleeder. And I don't know how you're set up on the BJ7, but on the Mark II, the bleeder is very hard to get to. So this article attached a hose to the bleeder, and I think maybe Bob was talking about that. Hook a hose, and then you can bring the hose. You can put the hose up under the frame when you're not bleeding, but to bleed it, you just bring it down and it's right there accessible to operate.
Hmm.
That was an article in one of the Healey magazines, and I think I still have that article. So if I had your address, I could send that to you. It's got the parts that he actually used, you know, the ordering information. So you could order the parts and everything if that would work in your situation.
I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Anything that I don't have to pull the transmission out. My address is at Rich Duquette, which is under me right there, under my name. 63 Indian Hill Avenue.
63
Indian Hill Avenue, Portland, Connecticut.
Indian Hill. Okay.
Portland, Connecticut. 06480.
06480.
Yes.
Okay. I
And
will look for that.
my email address is the Duquettes, DUKETTS @gmail.com. That's for Bob.
DUK. And what was that after the DUK?
DUKETTS.
Oh,
You can
okay.
see it spelled under my name. Look at my picture.
Yep. Oh, I see it. I got it. Duckets@gmail.com.
Yeah, gmail.com. S on the end of my name, though.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Anyway, I'm going to try that bleeding again and see if I can get to it. My other problem that I had, which I also sent Rick, was the servo. I had this guy up in Suffield play with my servo after I told him about 4 times that I bled it and I couldn't get it to work, and he bled it, he couldn't get it to work. So then I was, the servo, I don't even know where it's mounted in this 67 Healey. I assume it's on the passenger side on the inner fender. Is that correct?
It's on the
On
lower
the front of the footwell.
Yeah, the footwell that you have to get at from underneath the car.
Yes.
But it's mounted to the underside of the footwell. And so anyway, I installed it not knowing which way it was supposed to go. But they gave me the mounting bracket, which wasn't quite right. And what I found out recently is I think I had it upside down, because the white diaphragm that's on that unit was faced up, if I recall, when I installed it. And I looked at the one in the picture, the Delphi that is on Moss Motors unit. It was upside down. The white, what do you call it? The white diaphragm was upside down. So I think my servo is good. I just had it installed wrong. He didn't know what to do. So I said, look, just disconnect the servo and just connect the brake lines and bleed them, and bleed them like they are, and I'll take them home. I have brakes, but they're very hard to pump. So I want to get that servo back on again. I pulled the servo apart and looked at it. It's pretty simple. And put it back together again. It looks fine. It's not a Girling servo. It's the what's the other one start with L? Lockheed servo, which is more of an aftermarket servo. They don't make the Girling servo anymore. Anyway, so I know it's fairly new. There's no rust on it or anything, so I don't think I have to rebuild it. So I'm going to try that, putting it upside down. And the other thing I had to do was the tachometer. Because I have the Pertronix in the ignition, I had to change the tachometer. Now I have a positive ground car. So I sent that off to, starts with an N company.
Nissinger.
Nessinger?
Yeah.
Something like, yeah. They rebuilt it for me, charged me $34 to send it back, by the way, which I think is a little bit outrageous. And now I'm trying to connect it, and I got a green wire there. I don't know where the green wire goes.
Okay, I'm bringing up the pictures now, I hope. Oh, wrong one. Well, here's the directions.
Yeah, there's the
Yeah.
directions, which I've been trying to follow at the bottom. Not at the bottom, right in the middle, section right in the middle. But if you look at the picture, I have the picture of the back of the tachometer.
All right, let me see if I can bring up the picture. Give me a second, please.
Sure.
Richard, do you have a pencil handy?
Yeah, I do.
All right, the guy that makes the clutch bleeders now, the remote clutch bleeder.
Yep, in Ohio.
Yes, it's Bob Haskell.
HASKEL.
2 L's.
HASKELL. Okay.
His email address is rchaskell@earthlink.net. That's probably the easiest way to get hold of him. He charged me $35 for the clutch bleeder, and $2.50 for shipping. So just a little
Okay.
tight, but it's simple to put on, especially while you have access to your slave cylinder.
Yeah.
And once it's on, it's bleeding it in the future will be simple.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. Anyway, while I'm waiting for him to find that picture, I was just going to mention that I took the gas tank out of this when I got the car because it was too heavy. It's a racing gas tank. It's solid steel, and it's a very well built gas tank. If anybody wants one who's racing for cheap. Anyway, I've got that. I don't know if you guys are in touch with anybody who races.
They were like looking at each other and everything, and then we saw kitten, he ran in the grass and ran down to it, and it turned out it was all kittens.
Okay, that should be the picture coming up.
There it is.
So
Yes. See this?
all 5 of them in this group, and then the mother decided she'd take off, and the other 3 just like the Pied Piper in the world.
Hello?
Yes. Who's
Okay, keep on talking.
see the spade? See the spade connector in this picture?
Yes,
It says minus BAT.
yes.
I don't know what goes to that.
The hot wire, the green wire in the coming out of the wiring harness.
Oh,
You'll have a green wire
Yes.
right around that area, and it will have a female spade connector on it, and that plugs into that.
okay.
The
That's
other
one
wire coming out of the top, the little wire that we can just see,
the
I
white
can't
one.
read what it says on there.
That one goes.
That wire is going to go over to the positive terminal of your coil.
According to the
Probably have to run a new wire for that. You don't have one in your factory wiring harness.
Okay, Bob,
Yeah,
on the paperwork, if you read what it says on the paperwork, it tells me that white wire goes to the negative side of the coil,
okay. Sorry.
whether it's positive or negative ground. That's what it said anyway.
Okay, well, you're gonna have to add a new wire to put that in.
Yes, I did. I already put that one in.
Okay, so
But
the
I don't
green
have it-
wire then goes on the spade terminal, and your black wires with the loop hook on them are going to go onto the post for the ground for the whole unit, and that's all you need.
I've got two other white wires. They're hot wires, the 2 white ones.
They should be someplace else.
I think they go on the 2 posts,
No,
2 long
go on the
posts.
posts.
Can I interrupt here? The white wire you've got was probably originally a loop for the earlier style of tachometer, and it has probably been cut, and it most likely just goes to the ignition system.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't have a white wire. I added this white wire to the one that they gave me back. The one you
Michael,
see.
I think you missed it earlier. This is a BJ8 tack. So wouldn't there be a loop that was supposed to be added with a Pertronix?
No, when Neisinger changed it over, they did away with the loop, Rick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The loop is gone.
Yes.
There's nowhere on the back of that tack there where the loop would have been.
Okay.
They
Yes.
put that spade terminal there, and that's where the green wire is going to go, and the
Okay.
white wire coming out of there has to go over to the coil.
Yes.
Other white wire, it's just like Michael said. It used to be a loop, or it would have been a loop, but it probably just goes over to the ignition switch,
One of them does. One of them goes to the ignition switch.
and the other would have gone out to the coil. But
Okay.
you don't use that wire anymore. You put this white wire and you add the wire. If it does go to the coil, use a continuity checker, and if that wire is going to the coil, then you can just put it on the white wire coming out of the
Okay.
back of the tack.
Do you have another picture? I showed pictures of the wires.
Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna have to dig it out.
Bob, here's the thing. When I took this tachometer out, I disconnected all the wires, and then an hour later, I tried to start my car, it wouldn't start. So I said, what did I do wrong? So I went back to the two white wires that I disconnected from the tack. I put them together and my car started. So those two white wires must go to the switch.
The two
Starter key.
wires, the white wire goes from the ignition switch out to the coil. It's what powered the coil before you had it changed over.
Oh, so one of the white wires is not going to be used then?
Correct. Right now, that white, you must have cut the white wire, or somebody did, and that's why when you got the tack out of there, the car wouldn't start.
Yeah. Okay, here's the picture. If you see those two white wires that go to the very bottom of the picture,
Yep,
I connected them with a little nut and bolt,
yep.
and that's why my car will start. If I disconnect those two, my car won't start.
All right, so just
One of them goes to the key.
one goes to the key, the other goes to the coil. It powers the coil.
Yes.
It's
That's
the
correct.
hot wire to the coil.
Okay,
It
but I'm
used
going to have to
go
run
through a
that.
loop on the back of the tachometer.
Yep, you're getting a little
I
frustrated
don't-
with each other. Well, it sounds like it.
With the Pertronix, on the tech,
The
on
Pertronix
the,
one's very technical. It's like it's hard to like vocalize this. It's like
I got bitches.
muted.
why I ran, Bob, why I ran a special wire for the coil is because the wire that was on there is a black and white one, because it's a Pertronix that's connected to the negative and positive now.
The black and white wire doesn't have anything to do with powering the coil. It actually shorts the coil out. That black and white wire goes to the battery cutoff switch in the back of the car.
Okay,
All right. So when the battery switch is turned off, it shorts the coil so nobody could start the car, even if they used a jumper or hot wired it. It still wouldn't start because the coil's dead.
okay, Bob, so if I disconnect these two white wires and I take the one white wire and I try to follow it, it won't go to the coil. Because the two on the coil are different wires. They go into the distributor.
One goes to the distributor.
It's black and white.
Yeah,
The black and with the Mike, help me out here.
Yeah, okay. Can I just start at the beginning? The white wire you're looking at there, as Bob said, goes from the ignition switch originally through the loop on the distributor, on the tachometer. It doesn't actually connect to the tachometer and then goes all the way to the coil. That's what the white wire did originally.
Yeah.
And that nut that you've got on the bottom there that's pretty dangerous, because that is live. And if you short that, it's not fused, it'll burn out your wiring harness. So the first thing to do is make sure that's really well insulated.
Okay,
Now, the tachometer you've got is a later type of electronic tachometer, and it uses a pulse that comes from the coil separately from the main ignition wire. So you run the distributor side of the coil, that's the black and white side of the coil, to the tachometer, and that it'll work.
okay,
A totally different type of tachometer, actually.
okay.
Got it?
So the other question, if I connect these wires, the hot wire in a couple of spots there, and I put a fuse in just to cover my butt, to, in case I don't burn something out,
White wire?
any of them, put a fuse in.
You don't need a fuse on the ignition system.
I know, but if I do it wrong, I'm going to burn my system up.
Yeah, sure.
Put a
Okay.
fuse- If you
I would rather
you need
burn
to
the
put a
fuse.
put a fuse in the green wire.
Okay, just in the
That's
green.
what's
Already-
powering the
Green
coil.
wire is already fused. Green wire comes from the green on the fuse box.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, you're correct, it is fused. So maybe I should maybe I should fuse the white wire going to the key.
Up
Yes.
to you. I don't.
You could, but if that fuse blows, your car's going to be dead.
That's right. And you'll have a hell of a time
Immediately,
figuring out
the
what's wrong.
car the engine will no longer run if that fuse blows.
Okay.
You'll have no power to your coil.
Correct.
All right. You see, I don't want to go spend $300 again to do my tack over.
You don't have to.
So anyway, well, I'll work on it and see what I can do. So I'm taking up a lot of time here. So I'm gonna,
Well, we got nothing but time. And Rich, the other thing is that we will, since this is being recorded, you can go back to our YouTube channel. I'll put it up as soon as it's done, being downloaded, and you can just review what everyone has told you already and
Yeah.
stop it and go back over it. So that's very helpful.
okay.
Perhaps if I can elaborate, the thing that you're missing here is that the white wire goes to the power side of the coil, not the distributor side of the coil. So it's no use to you in that type of tachometer.
All right.
Got that?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, you can also start a GoFundMe page for a new wiring harness.
That's a good idea. But when I pulled the white wires off, they were both connected to these two posts that actually are mounting posts to hold it into the dash. That, the one that says plus 12 volts on both. The white wires were both connected to those.
And the tack worked?
No, because it was the old tack.
Yeah. No, they shouldn't be on those posts.
Yeah, I don't know why they were, unless somebody else put them in there. To see, I got this car in a disarray of, there was a whole bunch of stuff I didn't know about. And I've been trying to work with it, trying to bring it back again. So far, so good.
That's all good.
Any more questions? If you do have a question, you're all muted. Make sure you take yourself off mute first, please.
Rick, this is Les Roberts. I just wanted to provide an update to a conversation we had last time. I had asked if it made any difference as to which direction the sending unit was mounted in the gas tank, and the answer I got is it didn't matter. You could mount it either direction, forward or back. And I had my gas gauge redone, and I had the new sending unit, and I matched them up outside of the tank, and they worked fine. And I installed it with the the receptacle for the electrical connection facing the front of the car. And it had all tested out well outside of the car. And all of a sudden, it didn't work. It went down to about half a tank full and stopped. And so I pulled the unit out and I measured into the tank. And it turns out that the tank has a recess in it. And the part nearest the front of the car is about 5.5 inches deep. And the part to the back half of the car is about 4 inches deep. Now this is on a Moss steel replacement tank. So if you put it in that direction, it bottoms out on the 4-inch portion, because the arc that the float actually swings in is about a 5.5-inch arc. So it really is important that you face it with the bend in the wire for the float facing forward in your car, and the connection for the electrical component facing the back of your car. Otherwise, your gas gauge will not give you accurate readings on the low end, which is where it is most important. So we just wanted to pass that along and let people know that it definitely does matter. And that, you know, if you have a Moss replacement tank, it is of that dimension.
And what car is this, Les?
It's a BT7, but the steel gas tank, it's an 021-799, is the same tank that Moss offers for all of the cars.
Okay. Because I know Peter was talking about that with respect to a Sprite, and it may not make a difference in Sprite because it's a fairly
No,
flat tank.
Peter sent me a note and said, yes, you're absolutely correct. I had 2 sending units in my Sprite facing the wrong direction and corrected them yesterday. So he had sent me that note.
And this is why we always start these meetings with, we take no responsibility for any of the advice that we give you.
It's trust with verification.
Trust but verify. Does anyone else have a question?
Yeah,
Again,
I do. Hello, Rick.
who is it?
This is Bill Hewen from Bethlehem, Connecticut. How are you?
I'm good, Bill. How are you?
I'm good. I spoke with you a couple weeks ago, and you were able to refer me to a British car specialist concerning a distributor cap and a rotor
Oh, yeah.
that is related to Lucas as opposed to a no-name.
Yeah.
And I did receive the Lucas cap from British car specialist. I also received the rotor, and I put the cap in yesterday and went to put the rotor in. The rotor does not go down on the shaft. It's almost as though the rotor is a little bit too small for the shaft, as well as the fact that the rotor is almost a 16th inch, if not a touch more, than the rotor that I had there before.
You mean for height?
The height, correct.
Okay.
Is the rotor a original Lucas rotor?
Well, the new rotor is the red style rotor.
Okay.
Supposedly, there's a Moss number on it, which I kind of checked Moss records for the newest Healey catalog. And of course, it doesn't relate, but it did come in a Moss bag that was sealed. And when you go to put the cap down, the cap will not sit correctly on the distributor unit. So I used my old cap that I had, or I used the new cap, put in the old rotor, and it's fine. The old rotor, as I said, is definitely shorter than this red rotor that I got from British Car Specialists. And John was very helpful when I spoke to him. You know, I thought we had it done correct, and it's not. What can I do?
Michael or Bob, have you seen any issue like that with the with the red rotors?
I don't use the red rotors. I still have a reasonable stock of very old stock of original Lucas rotors, and that's all I'll use.
I thought the red rotor was the way to go.
You know, I've had a lot of trouble with other types of rotors, so I covet my Lucas stock and stick with it.
All right, well, I have like 2 other rotors, and either one of those fits just fine, so I do have a backup. But you know, now I'm stuck with a red rotor that doesn't do anything. Many years ago, I got stuck in my Healey. I have a 67 3000, and I was just driving along and it died on me. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. Took the distributor cap off, took the rotor and took it out, but never looked inside. And the little tip in the inside had broken off so that the shaft was not making the rotor turn. And, you know, somebody of better knowledge than me looked at it and said, oh, here's your problem. So I just got a new rotor at that time and put it in and it worked fine.
The experience that I had with aftermarket rotors was that there was a very long period. They attached the brass arm to the rotor with a rivet. And the original Lucas were not done that way. They had a piece of Bakelite that stuck up from the surface of the rotor, from the surface of the thing. The arm was put on top of it, and the Bakelite was sort of spread, so there was no rivet going down. And I think that's when they used to press them and used to crack the rotor, which was right above the distributor shaft, and then eventually the voltage would arc through the crack onto this distributor shaft, and that's why people had them stopping. But original Lucas rotors don't have a rivet.
Oh, okay, they do not. Okay, I'll have to look at the ones that I have and see if there's a rivet or if not a rivet. There's different shapes to them as far as the tops. Some of them are elongated, some of them are just short and round.
If you've got Norman Knox Tech Tips, he's got a really good page in the back of that shows the shape of all the Lucas rotors. It's very useful.
Oh, okay.
And you can buy that through British Car Specialists. It's a very useful book. It's probably about maybe 300 pages altogether. And
excellent book.
It's excellent. A lot of questions that get asked here have been answered there years ago, and the information is still very valid and valuable. Recommended highly.
My 67 Healey I've had for 48 years, and nobody has screwed with it, including myself. So anything that has to be done to it is really not a big problem because it hasn't been messed with and done the wrong way.
So you're going to remedy that by screwing with it now, right?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Rick, what was the name of that book?
Tech Talks, I think it is. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, I think Tech Tips. I think I've got a copy. Hang on.
Okay. And it's available through British Car Specialists. It was written by Norman Knock, and Norman was the founder of British Car Specialists in Stockwood, California, I think.
Right.
And
California.
he was a contributor to both clubs, the Austin-Healey Club of America and the Austin-Healey Club Pacific Center, for a number of years. He passed away maybe about 10 years ago. The business is now run by his son. His wife was working there as well. I don't know if she still works there, but and her son is David, and he still does an excellent job. That place has a lot of hard to find stuff and correct stuff. There it is. Michael's gonna pull your. You're gonna go back a little, Michael, away from your camera. There you go.
There.
Yeah, just there. Yep. And just look for British Car. Just Google British Car Specialists, and once you get onto the website, you will find a link to the book.
Book.
I remember Norman, but I met him at one of the conclaves.
He was
Can you
quite a
put the book
character.
up
He
again?
was very, if over the years, if you looked at the things that he added to the magazines, his work was absolutely beautiful. And he did a lot of, he had a black 100 that he had modified and had done some beautiful modifications on. That car was pristine.
Well, Rick, you were very helpful in sending me to a British car specialist because as I said, I had ordered a distributor cap. When it came in, I was putting it together and it had a crack in the top. And I noticed it after about putting 3 wires in it. So then it was another 2 weeks waiting for for a new piece to come in. So I appreciate the fact that you knew where I should call, and I thank you very much for that.
Well, you're welcome. And, I'm sure if you send that red rotor that doesn't work back, you'll get your money back as well.
Well, considering it costs $6.99 to buy it, it'll probably cost me more to send it back.
Probably. Well, you could probably donate it to our next club raffle and stick somebody else with it.
I had something to say about our last meeting.
Go ahead.
I was asking about, I called last meeting, I was asking about trying to find a positive ground radio. And we went through this whole thing. And somebody mentioned that this place that, I don't know, it's a place that rebuilds old radios.
That was Bob Abbott that mentioned that.
And he said, yeah, just call them. They'll, they sell those. Well, I did call them and they have nothing to do with positive ground radios. So that information is no good anymore because they don't do that. They only deal with negative ground radios. So I'm still on the hook here trying to find where I can get a positive ground radio.
Why don't you just change your car to
Somebody gave
negative
me a
ground?
name. Somebody gave me a name from this group here, and I still have the name. I haven't called them yet because I've been too busy doing other things on this car. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out that they don't do positive ground radios. But
Bob, are you still Bob Abbott?
Yeah.
Is that the same person or a different person than you talked about?
I'm not sure which person that Richard's talking about. Who did you call to ask about positive radios?
I think maybe you're the one that gave me a guy's name to call. I never called yet though. But I did call the company that does the antique rebuild radios.
You're talking about, you called Retro Radio?
Yes.
Yeah, no, they don't have anything in a positive or
Right.
radio.
Okay, so
But the other name that I gave you, Mike Hansen,
yes, I think
down in Pennsylvania.
that's the
He
one I did
doesn't-
not call. I did
He
not call.
doesn't make radios, but if you have a radio, he will convert it
Oh, he
to
will.
whatever you want.
Okay.
He will take your AM BMC radio and make it a 50 watt per channel AM FM stereo. He'll add MP3, he'll add Bluetooth, he'll make it positive ground for you.
Will he play my? Will he be able to play my
CD?
CDs on it?
Pardon me?
Will he be able to play my CDs
There's
on
not
it?
enough room in that case to put a CD player. No, can't do that. The case is only about 6 inches by 4 inches tall. So
Well, I know, but the radio that I have in it now fits, and it has a CD in it. I wonder if he can do that one for me.
you'll have to ask him. I don't know.
I could.
Can
could
somebody
call him.
ask- Somebody asked, why don't you change your car to negative ground?
Well, there's this long story to this. When I got the car, the guy who was working on it before he passed away, we're trying to go to negative ground. So I had burned out the whole wire system trying to play with it, and they had to put another wire. Well, that was a new wire system I burned out. That's why I'm so, paranoid about this. So I had to buy another wire system, and he insisted this car is positive ground. You're going to make this car positive ground. I said, look, I don't care. Just fix the car, and I'll worry about it later. So he did positive ground, and he had to buy the positive Pertronix, and we had to buy a positive alternator. And now I have the other alternator in the garage. It's good, but he didn't use it. And so this is why I have a positive ground system, which I didn't want in the first place, but he didn't know, I guess, how to do the negative ground. He insisted this car came with positive ground. This is what we're going to do. So anyway, I guess I could change it over, but I'm not doing it. I'm not going to spend another $600.
Richard, I had bought a BMC radio on eBay. There's, sometimes it's good just look out there. I mean, it's an original BMC radio, it was positive ground, and it was on eBay. I got it for $1.25.
Wow.
So, there might be something like that. And mine's still, my car's a positive ground, and my tack was redone because I put the Pertronix in it and all that stuff. And from what I understand, to go to negative ground, you have to go to an alternator, and then your tack won't work and blah, blah, blah. So I just kept it positive ground, and it's been fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I'd have to change my tachometer again.
Yeah, forget it.
And, there's just too much. So I ended up buying a alternator that looks like a generator. And seems to work okay. They did something, I don't know what they did to the inside of it to make it look like a generator, but it really is an alternator. Have you seen those? Does anybody have one in their car? They look like a generator.
I've seen them advertised. I don't know how good they are or how
Like a
bad.
Healy. They look like a Healy generator.
Yeah.
With that. I still have the old Healy generator. It's still good.
The company that does most of that is called Power Gen. I've got a 51 Mercury that I put that on, and it's the only way to go. But Power Gen.
Power Gen. Well, here's what happened. I bought this and he put it in the car. I took the car home, figuring it was all done. I went away for 3 days, came back, my battery's dead. So he said, yeah, I called him up and I said, why is my battery dead? Well, yeah, I think you probably need a new battery. You got a bad battery. So I had my buddy check the battery out. The battery's new. And he said, this is a good battery. There's nothing wrong with this battery. So we figured out that it was drawing juice. So it seemed like when I pulled the small wire off the alternator, the light in the trunk went out because that's what we're using for a test light. And so he said, it's coming from your alternator. So I brought the car back up to this guy again, and he found that there was a draw somewhere else. It wasn't on the alternator. But if I had to have replaced that alternator that looks like a generator, if I had to replace it, the guy that sold it to me, it was in Ohio or somewhere up there, and he deals with those generators, and so do a lot of other people. But if you want to send it back, if there's something wrong with it, they won't take it back because it's made somewhere else. They said it's made overseas somewhere, and I couldn't find out where, and neither could the guy that installed it. But we didn't have to do that because they found that short was being drawn from somewhere else. So I'm okay. But beware of that particular kind of generator and where they're producing them. But you said Power Gen makes them, which I don't know if they're here or overseas somewhere.
Well, the Power Gen that I have on it, and it's on a 51 Mercury with a flathead, but it came from Speedway, a company called Speedway, and they try not to buy Chinese manufactured items. And it's been in my Mercury now for 15 years, and it's been great.
Yeah. Well, I looked up the guy who originally invented this alternator generator, and he was from the States. So somebody else is copying a copycat on these. So
Well, one thing, if you do put an aftermarket radio in and it includes a clock, a lot of these, all of them will take a power drain to keep that clock running. So sometimes people put a newer radio in it and don't realize that they're going to have a constant power drain keeping the clock going.
Right. Yep.
All right, do we have any other questions, please?
I have a paint question.
Okay,
Got a 67 BJ8, the emblem was painted and it's worn away. So now I want to repaint the emblem. Anybody know a paint code or color that would work?
Are they painted?
Mine was.
the Mark IIIs toward the end of production, I think they decided that having the enamel close-on, but it's not really close-on. They cheaped out and got a cheaper group. They got cheaper ones that were just painted.
Correct.
I think if you frankly, if you just went to your local Ace Hardware store and picked out a Signal Red or a Rust-Oleum Red, you'd be close enough for government work. And I don't think you'd,
Actually, originally it was actually quite a dark red. It was blood red, if anything, it wasn't the bright signal red originally.
Okay.
Back in '83, back in '83, I had to paint my signal, and I used a lacquer nail polish. Worked very well.
Just
What did your wife say?
It wasn't her shade.
No, and he had it on his toenails and it looked pretty.
Oh, I still got it there, Rick. I still got it on.
I ended up painting mine red, but to be perfectly honest, like for instance, my background's a jewelry industry, and the way they used to do it in the old days was cloisonne, but you can actually get a 2-pot epoxy. You mix, and like for instance, all the stuff today that looks like cloisonne is all 2-pot epoxy. And all it is you just mix those two, you put them in there and it hardens, and it's like a filler, just it fills a void. I mean, that would look 100% better than painting, but
No, the point here is that with the Mark IIIs, they didn't have the cloisonne of the earlier cars. It was just silver with paint put over them.
Only on the very late Mark IIIs.
It wouldn't look correct on a Mark III.
Yeah, it's a red badge of courage having that on your car.
What, just leaving it?
It would almost be a red badge of courage, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That's what I said, red badge of
I'm
courage.
sorry. Actually, I was having an online discussion with Patrick Quinn in Australia the other day, and and this is a real trivia part. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, if you have a Mark II, whether it's a B7 or a BN7 or a BJ7, take a look at your front badge and see if it has a hyphen in it or not, because somewhere along the line, they changed from having a hyphen to not having a hyphen. And the early cars had hyphens, later cars did not. And Patrick said that he didn't think there was any BJ7s with a badge with a hyphen on it. And I took a picture of mine and I said, well, I got one and I know some other people have them. So as far as we can tell, if you really want to get down the weeds, somewhere in the changeover to BJ7s, they probably just put all these badges in a big bin somewhere, and some of them got hyphens and others didn't, because they all say Mark II on them. They'll say Austin-Healey Mark II, and some will be Austin-Healey, others will just be Austin-Healey.
You also have to remember that the front badge was a collision part. It was something that was always, every time there's an accident, they got changed. So we don't really know. We've been working on this for the concourse guidelines for ages, and nobody seems to have an answer.
Well, unless you find somebody that owned the car originally and never had it collisioned, then you're probably not going to know for certain. But there's an awful lot of people that seem to, I'm fairly certain my front end is original. It was a 24,000 mile car, although it was used as a SCCA racer, but it shows no signs of having been swapped. And I'm pretty sure it was an original hyphenated front end. That's how the depth of things that the Concours committee gets into, is whether there's hyphens or not.
Rick,
Yeah,
I was in talking about what Daryl was saying about painting his emblem. I found not about the emblem, but about the amber lights and your clear signal lights and parking lights, the ones that are plastic. If they look scruffed up or a little, they're not bright anymore. What I found is cleaning them off real good with to take any wax and debris that might be on those, and then spray them with a clear lacquer. They come out really beautiful, just like brand new. If anybody's done that, I've done that. I just sold my BMW 73. I had a 3.0 CS, and I did it to the amber lights on that. They come out beautiful. So anyway.
that's an interesting tip. We hope it will work. Besides on German plastic, it works on British plastic as well.
Yeah.
We have any other questions?
I've got a question, Richard. Actually, I've got two. Barry Donaldson, Goshen, Connecticut.
Hey, Barry, how are you?
Good, good.
What kind of car do you have?
I've got a 62 Tricar Mark II.
Okay. And your questions are?
Well, I got two. The easy question is, you put up on the screen I think you did a little while ago, some wiring instructions for attack with a Pertronix ignition.
Oh, yeah.
Did you put that? Did you have that? Where could I get a copy of that? Or where could I get a copy of that real easy?
I can send you one.
That would be great.
That actually came from Richard, who sent it to me, but I can pass it on to you.
I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Second question had to do with my hydraulic system on the Mark II. I just finished rebuilding the clutch system, and we talked about that just a minute ago. And I thought, well, I got everything drained and what all, and I don't know what's been done on this car. Probably nothing. It's certainly looking at the slave cylinder and the master cylinder I took out. So I thought I'd change the brake master cylinder while I'm in there at it. And when you look at them, they look identical from the outside. They look the same. And when I look in the shop manual, the blow up pictures that they have in the shop manual look identical. One for the slave cylinder, or not, one for the clutch master cylinder and the brake master cylinder. I don't know if they have different borings or not. I know when I looked at the Moss catalog, the brake master cylinder was much more expensive than the clutch master cylinder. And my question is, are they the same?
Bob or Michael, do you know?
They're both the same.
They're both the
They're
same.
exactly the same. 6.25 is the bore on. 0.625, I'm sorry. 0.625 is the bore, and they're exactly the same. On your car, a BJ8 is different brake cylinder.
They actually have the same part number.
Okay, beautiful. That's just what I needed to know.
But different prices.
Yeah.
I would suggest, if you are in the market for a brake
Buy the cheap one.
master, to go through Pegasus Racing, because they still produce Girling parts. Now, whether they're the same Girling that they were 50 years ago, I doubt. But they're still, I think, a better quality than what you get from Moss, but that's my personal feeling. And I'm not sure whether they have the ones for the BJ8. I know they have the earlier ones, but not, I don't think for the BJ8.
Okay.
But it's worth a shot.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. That was it.
Any other questions?
That was it.
I have a quick one, Rick. If you
Go ahead, Rick.
time. Yeah, I've developed a slight like misfire and or a feeling like I'm running out of gas or so forth. I get it after the car is heated up. Probably am getting up around 180 or somewhere around there. I have changed recently the spark plugs, the rotor, the cap, and the wires, and I'm still getting a little bit of it. Any suggestions? Should I go one step and do the points and condenser at the same time, or?
I'll chime in a little bit. I had a similar problem. Talked about it on this call a while back. I just changed the coil and it worked.
Yep.
Easy change, 20 minutes.
I had the same problem on mine. I changed the wires and the coil and like brand new.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you.
I have a question for Barry. Barry, you had the tricarb.
Yes.
What kind of jets do you have in it? Do you have the needle jets?
Yeah.
Or
What,
do
what
you have,
size?
do you have ball joint jets?
Needle.
You have the needle?
Yes.
Have you synchronized them pretty well? Or do you
Yes.
have trouble?
No, I've synchronized them. They run quite well.
Well, when I owned one of those back years ago, and I was having trouble with the tricarb, trying to synchronize them, and I ended up buying this jet they were called Gross jets, and I don't know if they still sell Gross jets, but I installed those in the carburetors, and boy, what a difference it made! It was able to clear the carbs right up. So
I see Michael
anyway.
shaking his head.
What's that?
I see Michael Salter shaking his head at the mention of Gross jets.
Oh yeah.
Gross jets were wonderful, but they're no longer made. The guy was a one-man business and he closed down, and that's it. They're gone.
So what did you think of them, Michael?
They were fabulous jets. Fantastic.
They were.
Yeah.
Yes.
They had them. It was a guy in, I want to say Waltham, Massachusetts, that made them in his house,
Right.
and they were apparently very good for a number of years. And then after, I think he might have even sold the business at one point, but at some point toward the end of their production, they were not very
They
good.
went to hell in a handbasket. They were
Yeah.
terrible for a while.
Yeah. And I don't know whether they're available now at all, but if you got the later ones, they weren't good at all.
Well, somebody up in Massachusetts has that car of mine. I don't know where he lives now, but he bought it from, he was up near Boston somewhere, the 62.
Gross jets.
Ken Gibson, are you on there still?
Yes, I am.
First of all, I want you to introduce yourself and give us your history with the club, if you can
Well,
remember that far.
My name is Ken Gibson. My wife's name is Nancy, and we joined the Austin-Healey Club probably back in 1975 or 76. We were one of the old timers, Don Pay, Bill Wood. I see Bev Sealand is still around, and we were on the team that created the New England chapter, and actually had something to do with the logo for out there on Cape Cod. So
I've been to Cape Cod. I went to that.
If you look at the logo, that's actually a picture of, I forget the first name, but the last name was Jacobson. We used to have a lot of
Paul Jacobson.
Paul Jacobson. We used to have a lot of meets on Cape Cod, and they were gracious hosts. So yeah, I go back a little ways.
Matter of fact, if you look at the most recent Healey exhaust notes that Dutcher put out, Bob Britton has a stack of old Healey of Northeast chapter newsletters, and he had a copy that was put into exhaust notes of the original founding meeting of the It was then called the Northeast Region of the Austin-Healey Club of America. And it's interesting to see that Ken's name is there. Rudy Markel, who he's in New York. He was one of the founding members. We've got a bunch of people that are still around that were amongst the founders, which is pretty amazing when you think the club is almost 50 years old and we still have people that have been members all along that time. So
Wasn't there a guy from Reading, Connecticut? Was that Rudy? Reading?
Rudy Strang. He was one of the earlier guys. Yeah.
He was from Reading, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rudy and his wife Joan. Now people know Rudy and his wife Joan because they always used to show up at Healey meets in matching outfits.
Yeah. I had forgotten that.
And then the weird part was that Rudy and Joan got divorced, and Rudy showed up at Lime Rock, one event at Lime Rock with his new girlfriend or wife, and she was wearing a matching outfit too, and we thought that was quite weird. But at any rate,
Well,
anyway, Ken, you said you had you got some parts for sale that you want to buy or something?
Yeah. Well, one other thing I want to say about history is one of the things that I reminisce a lot about is I was fortunate enough to be around early enough that I got to meet Jerry Coker, I got to meet Donald Healey, Joffrey Healey, and I've got pictures of myself with them with their autographs, and they're all hanging up in my man cave.
Mhm.
Good memories.
Do you remember when they
posted that on both our Healey Exhaust Notes and on our Facebook page? Is that a lot of the newer members won't realize how close a relationship we had with the Healey family, and how often they came to our meets, especially down in the Cape.
Yep.
It was a great opportunity for all of us to actually meet these people that were our heroes, and to realize how friendly they were and how interested they were to see our cars. And Donald used to laugh and say how much better our cars were than anything that ever came out of the factory.
Well, I think Donald had more fun looking at American ladies than he did Austin-Healey's.
Including Bev Sealand.
If I a little back history here, if you can hear me.
Sure.
Back in the early 70s, when Bill Wood and Don Payne and so forth were forming the Northeast Region Club, we had a bunch of guys down in Fairfield County, and we formed the Fairfield County Austin-Healey Club. And at one time we met at Howard Johnson's in Danbury with Bill Wood, Don Payne, and the gentleman's name, I forget if his first name was Walter or Arthur, but his last name was Blank, from Chicago.
Walter. He was the former national president.
And at that particular time, the two clubs were looking to form together. And I'll put it this way, when we went back to our club, which we had about 52 members in for Fairfield County, they decided that they would keep their $10 and keep it in the Fairfield County Club, as opposed to sending it to the New England chapter or the Northeast chapter. I have video of different gatherings that we had with the Fairfield County Club. And one of the ones that I have, which I don't know where it is, was also at Rhinebeck, New York, when the two clubs met together, and Bill Wood brought his 100S down to show, and he trailered it at that time. And then after that, we all met down in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Yep.
And met Donald Healey at that particular time. So I go back a ways too.
Well, it was like the Sharks and the Jets. Look, West Side Story. The same way, that's gone on for years between the Austin-Healey Club USA, or it used to be called the Austin-Healey Club Pacific Center, and there's been talk about them and the Austin-Healey Club of America joining, but they've never been able to quite bring it together. There's always been different rivalries, but someday I think that's going to happen. You know, as time goes on and we get fewer and fewer members, we'll have to join up. But
Now,
we'll see.
anybody have a Super 8 movie projector that works? Because mine no longer wants to work. I have 2 large reels of Healy videos taken of different events back in the 70s.
I'm wondering if there's are any companies that will transfer those to a disc or I mean, I'd love to show those on a disc player or something like that, if that was possible.
There's companies out there that'll do that, Rick.
I
There are
don't
many.
know how much it costs. I mean, I won't, if we might even be able to get the club to pay for that, possible. No, I'll look into it and get in touch with you and see if that's possible for us to do.
Yeah, that's something that's definitely possible, and
Yeah.
it's not that costly to do.
No.
They'll do that. If you look up on the internet for transfer, there are a number of places and people that'll do that.
No, that'd be very interesting. I mean, you probably know I try on our Facebook page. I'm always looking for new videos that include Austin-Healey's in them, and I particularly like the ones that were in movies in the 50s and 60s, the period ones. But I put one up on Facebook today.
Great.
Yep. It was from the 1980s show Perfect Strangers, which included a character named Belky, and it was all about someone trying to purchase a Mark II Healy that was a 3000. That was sort of the feature of the show. It's a pretty cool video.
Yep, it is.
Rick?
So anyway, to get back, Ken, what parts are you looking for or selling or whatever you're doing with them?
Well, I just, within the past month, I bought a BN2 out of Bridgeport, Connecticut off of Facebook. And it's a running, driving, mechanically all set car and all new upholstery top. But being a BN2, it's got BN1 side curtains. And I'm really looking to see if somebody has some BN2 side curtains. Moss has them, but by the time I got them here, it'd be $1,000.
What color? What color?
Black.
I got some blue, I think.
You can't.
I can dye them. And I would be willing to sell or trade the BN1 side curtains for that.
I'll have a look, see what I got left.
All right. My email.
Send them to Fire Tablet.
My email is very simple. It's just kengypson@yahoo.com.
Okay, Ken, I got that.
KENGYPSON@yahoo.com.
And where do you live?
I live outside of Troy, New York, in a little town called Posenkill. I'm 20 miles from Bennington and 20 miles from Williamstown.
Okay.
Ken, there's also a
Gentleman
Facebook.
from Ocean.
There's a Facebook page for Austin-Healey 100s. You might try looking on that one as well.
Okay.
If you just, if you on the search function on Facebook, put Austin-Healey 100 and you probably come up with that one.
Okay, doke.
Have you talked to Bill Wood at all lately?
As a matter of fact, we talked to him about a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. He no longer has any Austin-Healeys. He does have an MGTD, and he's, as you know, he used to be a auxiliary Connecticut State Trooper. So he's got a Connecticut State Trooper car, I don't know, about a 72 Ford. And he seems to be doing pretty well. Lynn is having some minor issues, but overall they're doing pretty well.
Okay, that's good to hear. I'll have to get in touch with him. I talked to Beth not too long ago. Someone had posted a nice picture of her and Billy I'm thinking, man, it might have been with Bill in the 100S down at Cherry Hill, I think it was.
Mhm.
And I sent it along to her. How's Billy doing? Do you know?
He's doing extremely well. He still lives next door to them in Bill's mother's house. So he
Okay,
keeps an
yeah.
eye on him.
Because he had kind of dropped off of Facebook. I hadn't heard from him, so I was hoping he's okay. Well, that's
Yep.
good. Yeah, I
And
know he had that 52 Ford police car, or that every once in a while he'd show up and dress up in his Connecticut auxiliary police officer's outfit and, you know, appear at Lime Rock with it.
I believe he still has that car also.
Yeah, and that TD that he had was an original car.
Yeah.
Very original. And Bill, for those who don't know, Bill at one time owned 5 100Ss.
I believe that is correct.
I bought my 100S from Bill.
Well, the one that he had was the green one. The TV actor owned it.
The Cooper 100S.
Yeah, the Jackie Cooper.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if anybody saw it, but it sold about 3 years ago for 1.4 million.
Yeah, I actually got to drive that car. That was a wonderful car. And Florentine had done the restoration. He also had one of the streamlined Austin-Healey Sprites. He had a 1967 that had, when he bought it, it had 1,300 miles on it. It never actually raced. It was a backup car. Or never raced at Sebring, but it was that was another fun car. He had. Well, the truth of the matter was that he was the editor of the national magazine called Chatter. This is before the days of the internet. And when anyone had a Healey to sell, they would send their ad into the editor. And somehow Bill Wood ended up as the editor with those ads before anybody else ever saw them. And a lot of times they never appeared in the magazine.
Well, I don't know which car it was, but I know he tracked one down and he actually imported it from Australia. And he also brought one in from Africa.
That was the one that was missing in Rhodesia, I think, which is now Zimbabwe. Yeah, he was good at, he was like a bloodhound as far as tracking things down. He would go back. And again, the more amazing part about this is that it was pre-internet days when it was much harder to do this, but he'd actually go back and get race programs from the 50s, and he'd find the name of the person that raced the car in the 50s, and then he'd go to that person and say, do you still have the car? And they said, no, I sold it to so-and-so, and he would track them down that way. He was also an insurance adjuster, and I think he had some access to probably information sources that the rest of us didn't, but he had the perseverance to do it. The one time he did get beat, for any of you who have ever seen the 100, that was the pink and black Earl's Court car. Bill had owned that and sold it to one of our also long-term members, Alan Alfano.
Yeah.
But he didn't know that it was the Earl's Court car when he sold it, and it was only after Alan started restoring it and found traces of pink Hydora armor cord, and started researching the car that he found out it was the Earl's Court car. So I think it was the one that got away for Bill as far as valuable Healeys.
Whatever happened to Don Pay's number 2?
We don't know. I was talking to Don about that because in Enclave next year, which is going to be in September of 2022 in the Poconos, to which I hope you all will come. We are featuring, since it's the 70th anniversary of the introduction of the 100 at Earl's Court, we will be featuring the 100, and we have been looking for that car that was sold, and Don doesn't know where it is, and I don't know if it's gone off to Europe or we've tried to track it down and can't find it. I'm thinking somebody, and I'm trying to remember his name, begins with an H. He was either from Virginia or Pennsylvania. I think he's from Virginia, and he was also big into horses. I think he bought that car, and I don't know whether he still owns it or it's been sold on, but it's kind of disappeared into the woodwork somewhere.
Yeah, I remember I remember
All the
finding
cars
that car with Don.
Don found it in somewhere near Troy, I think. Wasn't it, Ken?
Well, it was about 45 minutes. Well, it was actually down towards Kingston, New York.
Okay. And he bought that car out of a barn as well. And
Yep.
then as he got into it, realized it was something special, and he actually had written to Jeffrey Healy, and Jeffrey told him all about the history of it and said you get a very rare car. It actually shows up as in one of, I'm trying to think which Healy book it is. It might be the original Healy book or one of the second ones that was written by Jeff. But there's a picture of the car and a letter that was sent to Don, and it was a very the pre-production Healys. It was one of the first 20. It was the second pre-production Healy.
Yep.
And there were a lot of differences compared to the 100 when it finally went into production.
Yep. Good times.
Times, you know, and it's a testament to either the club or to the cars that you know, we still hold on to them after all these many years. Think of, you know, nobody's got a 50-year-old refrigerator that they had at their mom's house that they're still keeping. So they do something for us.
You know, Rick, I remember Al Alfano when he was rebuilding that pink and black Healy. And people were kind of snickering. They didn't think they ever made a pink and black Healy. Yeah, we had a discussion over that over his house. I think he lived in Middletown, Connecticut. But I don't know where he is or where that car is now.
That car's been sold. It was on Bring a Trailer probably 3 or 4 years ago. Alan is still a club member. He doesn't, I don't know if he owns Healy's anymore, but he's still a club member. He's still down in Connecticut. But yeah, and he is, for those who didn't know Alan was probably one of the most meticulous restorers that you would ever run into. He was a person that was active on the Concours committee, and he'd be the kind of guy that would count the number of stitches per inch in upholstery and wanted to get everything exactly precise. And he turned out and he did, as far as I know, most of his or almost all of his own work, and did beautiful work. Yeah, those were good times. I'm hoping what I would really like to do as we get closer to our 50th club anniversary is have another summit on Cape Cod. We haven't had a Cape Cod event in quite some time. And as Ken said, we used to go to the Jacobson's house on Mashpee, and there was still quite a number of people that still remember those Cape meets, and it would be fun to go back down there. Matter of fact, we tried to do a summit there. We were thinking of doing a summit there a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago now. And Judd Perkins had inquired of the hotel down in Chatham, I think it was, or closer down to Provincetown, where we had our last meetings. And the guy that rented the place to us back then still was at the hotel and remembered us. So I don't know how long he'll be there, but you know.
Do you guys remember back when Bev Sealand had her red Austin-Healey, and it was at the Cape Cod meet and at the hotel, and she had it for sale? Does anyone remember that back then?
Yeah.
Anyway, I was going to buy that car from her, and somebody already put a deposit on it that weekend. So that was my first Austin-Healey meeting with the group.
Well, do we have any more questions for the evening? Well, I want to remind you all of upcoming summit and report. This is normally the portion of the program where Peter would give forward his summit summary, and we are now up to 90 registrations, which I believe is a new summit record for registrations. We have closed out registration because we don't have room for any more people. So if you still want to come to Summit, you can still contact Peter, and you'll be put on a waiting list. And if there are any cancellations, you can still come. It sounds like it's going to be a fantastic event. Newport, of course, is just a great place to be and a great place for the cars. And there's a lot of good activities that schedule. So we're all looking forward to that. And a bunch of people in the club were at Lars Anderson Museum meet in Brookline, Massachusetts yesterday. And if that's any example of what's going on, the floodgates have opened, and there were just tons of cars there. It had started to slow down, I thought, in the last few years, but boy, the place was packed yesterday, and all kinds of cars I had never seen before that had probably been worked on during the pandemic, while people were stuck in their garages and did the restorations. But it was a really great meet. I also want to do a compliment to Dutcha, who's online somewhere. Dutcha just put out the most recent Healey exhaust notes, and I know she puts a lot of work into that. And I thought this month's issue was really quite informative and was really well done. And I know she puts a lot of work into it. So that's a thankless task, and so I'm thanking her.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And other than that,
Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
Roy Crane.
Hey, Roy.
I got a couple of things I can share with the group they might enjoy. When I took the car out of storage after the winter, the overdrive didn't work anymore. So I got talking to John Esposito, who had done the rebuild on it, and I pulled the transmission tunnel off and put a jumper across the speed control switch on the transmission, and I had voltage coming all the way to the solenoid. So I figured it must be a solenoid. So I found one on eBay and ordered it. But in the meantime, I got back out there again and I threw the jumper back on it. And I got looking at the way the solenoid was attached, because I'm going to have to replace it. So I stuck my finger under it and it went pop, and it's been working ever since. So I called John Esposito and told him, he says, well, that's what you get for dealing with mechanical stuff. So yeah, it's something if you take a overdrive out of storage and it's not working, you might want to just push the solenoid to get it working again. The other thing is because the overdrive wasn't working, I was cruising about 55 miles an hour at 3,000 RPM for about 20 minutes on a 93-degree day. And I pulled up at a traffic light. And when I stopped for the light, the idle became very rough and almost dying on me. And I went to start up, and I had a dead spot in the throttle. And once I got up to about 1,500 RPM, 2,000 RPM, it was running fine. But every time I stop again, it would still have the problem in the idle. So I figured this must be temperature related. It's almost on the edge of a vapor lock while it's running. So I got looking at that, and I decided I would try to balance the carbs and see if they were still balanced and whatnot. And when I put the AHCNE over the rear carburetor, it would accelerate like crazy up to almost 1,500 RPM. Just putting the AHCNE out, whatever they call it. So I called Joe Curto and asked him, these carbs were something I bought on eBay and rebuilt, because the car didn't have any when I bought them. So they were an older set of carbs, and they ran good for about 500 miles, but now I got a problem with them. So I asked Joe if I sent him the carbs, would he rebuild them for me? And he said, yeah, I could, Roy. He says, but it's going to be October before you get them back, because I'm just that flat out. So I said, well, I'm not going to miss the driving season. So I bought a brand new set out of Moss Motors. They put new carburetors on, and they're running great. But when I looked at the rear carburetor, the piston on the rear carburetor was stuck open 3/4 of an inch, so that it wasn't moving. So every time you got up around 1,500, 2,000 RPM, that's where the needle wanted to be, and it would run fine. Just didn't want to run it idle. So that was another new lesson that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah, these cars don't like to be stored. They stick, and things happen, and you know, it's unfortunate what happens with them. Especially some of the modern gas isn't very, very kind to the fuel systems as well. I wanted to introduce it for those who didn't see Facebook. This is the other member of our tech team here. doing some fine carburetor adjustments himself.
Is that a monkey?
It is a monkey. So we call him in for the real difficult questions.
Rick, I have one final thing.
Okay.
I don't know how many of you have gone to the Stowe, Vermont Car Show.
Yes.
But it is now being held in Waterbury, Vermont, and it is on for this.
Waterbury.
Yes.
This is the invasion? Is the Stowe the British invasion?
No, this is not the British invasion.
Oh, okay.
This is the Vermont Automobile Enthusiast 3-day car show,
Okay.
August 13th, 14th, and 15th. And it's our 64th annual car show up there.
Oh,
So
are they doing foreign cars as well as American?
absolutely.
Everything.
They have, we have, I think, 3, possibly 4 classes for foreign cars.
Okay. And what of August?
August 13th, 14th, and 15th.
Okay.
We get between 400 and 600 car shows, about 1,200 vendors, car corral,
Okay.
car show on Saturday, and judging and trophies on Sunday.
All right, well, if there's nothing further, folks, thank you very much. I would also tell you if you're looking for a very nice Mark III Phase 2 BJ8 at a reasonable price, take a look in this month's Healy exhaust notes for Nick Sarkadius's car. We've been working to get that ready for sale for his wife, and it's a nice car. I think it's probably got 45,000 miles original and a new paint job, and it's kind of a nice little car. So if you're in the market, take a look at the ad and Healy exhaust notes, and please buy it.
What year was that, Rick?
Sorry?
What year was that car?
1965.
And
And
it's
if
in
you're
the Healy notes?
Pardon me?
It's in the Healy notes, did you say?
Healy exhaust notes, a club magazine, but if you're interested, send me an email at HealyRick@Yahoo and I'll send you the information.
Okay, I know a friend of mine's interested in the BJ8.
Okay. Yeah, it's a Phase 2. It seems to be in fine running condition. It's almost totally rust free except for a small area in the front passenger footwell. But other than that, the chassis is sound. Everything else underneath the sound. As I said, it's got new paint. It's a good driver level car. It's not a concours car, but it's a real nice driver.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Have a good evening, everyone, and talk to you in a month.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Long, everyone.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Good night.